Hey there, today's subject is slash chords, and I'm gonna explain what that is. And to help me do that, once again, I'm using Mick Goodrick's fantastic book, The Advancing Guitarist. So there are different kinds of slash chords, but technically it's just a triad over a bass note. So we're only gonna look at major triads for this lesson, because I think those are the most common and the most strong. It's the strongest sound, and plus it would take too long to go over all of them. In this book, he goes over every possible slash chord, but I'm just going to take a look at the major triads. So, for example, G triad over C. That would be a slash chord. Not to get confused with a polychord, which would be a chord over another chord. Like it's very hard to do on guitar. It's more something you would do in orchestration, like classical music, film scoring, or whatever. But let's say a D triad maybe over a C triad. That would be a polychord. But this, a triad over a bass note, is a slash chord. I should say over a bass note other than a bass note that is not in the triad. So there are different kinds of slash chords. He categorizes them as obvious seventh chords, less obvious seventh chords, and hybrid structures. So we're gonna go over all of the combinations and see what that is. So if we take all the 12 major triads and put them over C, we will see what we get. So let's get started. First off, we have C over C, which is redundant, obviously. It's just a C chord. Next up is D flat over C. So C over C, D flat over C. Now already we're in what he calls here, that would be a less obvious seventh chord, because it is actually just an inversion, right, of D flat major 7. D flat major 7. So context is everything when we're talking about this stuff. If I play like that, you hear a D flat tonality. But if I go like this, let's say this is an intro to a song. D flat over C. Then now this is a Phrygian sound. So now the root is here. And before you heard it as a D flat, you know what I mean? So it's perception, depending on the context, where the chord is and what's before it and after it, will decide how you treat it. So, but if it's an intro, a vamp like this, the scale would be a Phrygian scale, right? Could even be a Phrygian dominant. It is a Phrygian sound, and sometimes also there you have this thing going on, like a C, B in the bass. So that's a C with the B in the bass, but I don't think of that as a slash chord, even though technically it is a slash chord. I think of that as it's just a passing bass note. It's very different from this kind of thing, right? So again, context. Same thing with the next one, D over C. If I hear that, I hear a Lydian kind of feel. But again, this is a 7th chord, it's just an inversion of D7, right? Or you can have this, maybe then it doesn't sound like a slash chord, in my opinion. It sounds just like a falling bass note. Because now it sounds like we're in D. Or G, perhaps. As opposed to if I have like a, this is the tonality, the gravity of whatever we're playing. I don't know how to explain it. So let's make a vamp with that chord. So that's a Lydian, C Lydian. Could even be Lydian sharp 5, I guess. Okay, next up is what he calls an obvious 7th chord. So E flat over C. It's just a C minor 7, right? So it's easier to think of it as a C minor 7 rather than E flat over C. There's no point in thinking of it like that. Except sometimes you have like a pedal bass and moving triads like Green Dolphin Streets. Then it actually makes sense to call it E flat over C just to be consistent, right? It's triads moving over a bass note, but it's easier to think of it as just C minor 7. I think kind of the same thing with the next one, E over C. Because it's just a C major 7 sharp 5. So let's listen to that. So Lydian, what is it called? Lydian augmented? Lydian sharp 5. Could also be the so-called augmented scale. Then you get the C triad, E triad, and A flat. Sorry, C, A flat, and E. So I'm not gonna get into that too much. I have previous lessons on the augmented scale, but from that scale you can derive 3 major triads or minor, and create all sorts of crazy polychords and what have you. So moving on is F over C, which is just an inversion, because the C is within the F triad, so it's just a F chord. Next one is what Mikko Goodrick calls a hybrid structure, so F sharp over C. This we need to look at, so I'm gonna make a little vamp here. So the scale could be the altered scale. Because the F sharp triad you can find within that scale. I actually prefer the symmetrical diminished, the half whole. Here also, I said before we're only going to look at the major triads, but I think it's really interesting to play F sharp minor over C. That's a very strange sound that you don't hear too often. Then you would have to play the half whole scale, right? Something to experiment for those of you who are adventurous. Next up, my favorite, G over C. It's a sunshine chord. So it would be a Lydian or a major tonality, right? Then we have A flat over C, and again, that's just an inversion, right? So it's technically not a slash chord, but again, sometimes you can think of that as a slash chord because it could be like an Aeolian kind of vamp. Could also be the augmented, right? If you really want to stretch things, could be something from the augmented scale. Next up is the one that is most uncommon and the strangest one, I think, which is A over C. Which would have to be from the symmetrical half whole. Maybe just take it a listen, give it a listen. It's the symmetrical diminished. I can't think of a tune that has that chord in it. So if you can think of a tune that has a A over C, let me know in the comments. Next up is B flat over C, which is what jazz musicians call a sus chord. So it gives you the Mixolydian mode. As opposed to classical musicians who think of a sus chord as this. Something that usually resolves. But for jazz players, for some reason, this is sus. So sometimes you'll actually hear when you have a vamp, just to make it a little bit more interesting, at the end of you can throw in like some tension, then you can use that A triad. You hear that quite often. Just to kind of give you that more tension, I guess. Now we're finally arrived at the last one, which is B over C. Which would be a diminished major 7 chord, I guess. So let's listen to that. So here you play the other diminished scale, starting on the whole note, or whole tone. What am I doing? Oh, sorry. Yeah, so this one is confusing because it's easy to hear B as the root, but you need to be able to hear C. This is the home bass. I want to resolve it to B. So, because for us guitar players, this could be like a B over C, for example. This could be something we play over a B as a B Phrygian kind of thing. But here we need to be able to hear. So it's an ear training thing to be able to hear where the bass is. And we guitar players, we're a little bit not so good at that. We don't really care about the bass too much, which is could be a handicap. There are other scales you could use here. You could use the E harmonic minor. Then if you think of that from C, it would be a Lydian sharp 2, I guess. Also the so-called Spanish Phrygian, which is a G bob scale, major bob scale, or the G harmonic major. So if you're confused by all this, there's I have previous videos on harmonic major and Spanish Phrygian and all that stuff. I also have PDFs on my Patreon page, and I want to thank you, by the way, as usual, your people are supporting me on Patreon. I'm using a new camera here. It's a camcorder, so I was able to buy that with help from my Patreons. So the idea is that if you support me on Patreon, the money I get from that will go towards improving this product, the channel, so gear and stuff like that. I'm not gonna go and buy booze for that kind of money. So the idea is that if you pay for this, you get a better product. Previously, I used my sometimes I used my camera, my Lumix. Can't remember what it's called, but it's the image quality on this one is amazing. But I can only record for like 15 minutes, 20 minutes at most, and so it's frustrating. I want to make longer videos like this one. I also sometimes use this Zoom Q4, which can record for a long time and has good audio, and there's no setup involved in this, right? You just press rec and go, but the image quality is pretty bad actually. Unless you're in ideal lighting situations, this is pretty terrible, but it's a great product for like just recording gigs or whatever, if they're outdoors. So now I have a camcorder which hopefully will give you maybe not as good of an image quality as the Lumix, but it gives you a good image quality and it can record for a long time. Then I record the audio with a Zoom for those of you who are interested in this kind of stuff. Now I'm gonna move on. Since I can record for a long time, there is something that he's talking about in this book. Oh, by the way, he lists every possible triad over bass note, so not just major triads but every triad, and there's quite a few of those. So if you want to dive into this kind of stuff, you should get this book. I've said that many times before. Oh yeah, so he says here on page 75, it is also very possible to arrive at other structures by putting the bass note above the triad or in the middle somewhere. In other words, the bass note does not always have to be the lowest note of the voicing. Weird, because I always assumed that a slash chord means a triad over a bass note. The bass note is on the bottom. But so I'm not sure what he means, that it's still a slash chord, or if he's just saying that you could also do this to come up with new voicings. I guess at the end of the day it doesn't matter, but let's look at that. So take the G over C, for example. Means we can do inversions of this chord, right? So the easiest way to think of it, I would say, is to take this, a regular C major 7 like that, and do the inversions. And then just lower the E to D. Then you get this. So these are all G over C, I guess. It's just that the bass note, as I said before, we guitar players, we don't really care because the bass player is playing something below all of this anyway. But I'm not so sure that I think of this as a slash chord. But nonetheless, it's interesting to do this. So if you would take this F sharp over C, for example, do the inversions of that. Now there's something for those of you who are kind of advanced players, something for you to dive into. So with all that, that was my lesson on slash chords. PDFs on my Patreon page. The Advancing Guitarist is easy to find. It should be on Amazon or yeah, it's pretty easy to find, and it's pretty inexpensive. So get it, and yeah, I'll see you next time.